Well, when certain things can go wrong, they will go wrong, and this is no exception. This is Bunker Bob Steinhagen here. I'm going to continue the show, the Bunker Bob Show, and we'll try to get Adrian Balcom with us in a minute. Yeah, so this was quite an experience. So this is the problem with doing a live show, and that is that the power can go out, and if that happens, well, then you're kind of dead in the water, and that's exactly what happened today. And in the middle of a show with Adrian Balcom, the Iron Lady, I don't know that I'm getting her back, and so that's one of the big questions as well. So, however, we were in the middle of focusing on and listening to Chris Cooney give a brief history of the Sonoma Verde and the PID, and so I'm going to start it again and replay that. So if you're catching this, you should already have seen the first part of the show, and if I can pull Adrian in, I certainly will. So here is what Cooney had to say.
I'm the civil engineer. I've been involved in this project since the property first was purchased and started the development back in 2004. Was part of the team that brought forth the development agreement. I think it's important for not only you but for the citizens here to give you some context and some history about how we got here and how Sonoma Verde came about. Back when the property was originally purchased, the property is approximately 550 acres. And there was about 200 acres of that property that was not in the city limits of McLennan Chisholm. And it was in your ETJ, but at the time, there was a lot of talk. There was a developer across the street on League Road and Wallace Road in that area that had a tremendous amount of property. They had amassed over 2,000 acres, and they were looking to do density of lots that were 6 units per acre. They were talking about doing wastewater treatment plants that were going to be plants that were going to be having discharge into the different bodies of water here. And so when Mr. Phillips and Mr. Howe and a group of investors came together and bought the property, we came to the city and and actually Mayor Donegan, I know is here, Mayor Donegan was initially part of those discussions. We came to the city and we worked on a development agreement to talk about what we could do as a developer and what we could do that we thought would bring value to the city of McLennan Chisholm, and kind of a win-win deal. And it took a number of years and meetings to get through that point. And what was developed was a developer agreement, and I think you guys maybe have seen it. If not, we're happy to provide you with copies of the development agreement. But what the development agreement set out was for a overall density within the Sonoma Verde development on the 550 acres, a density of 2 units per acre total.
Yeah, so the total is actually is 548 acres and 1,095 total possible homes that can be developed. Now, this development agreement was signed in 2007 that he's talking about, and Mayor Mike Donegan was the mayor back then. Citizens were not alerted to the fact that this was happening. So this is something that citizens were completely blindsided by, because we have a city ordinance that states you can only put 1.5 acres or one home on every 1.5 acre minimum per home site, and that is and that's what is really a sticking point for many in our community. That how this thing went forward in the dark of night behind closed doors. Now they when I say that, technically, they fulfilled all the legal requirements that the city is required to do, but it still was an end around. They did not inform citizens about what was happening, and so this was a complete shock to most citizens when they found out about it. And still, there are still citizens that don't have any idea about what's happening with Triple Creek. But here's the thing, and this is what's interesting, is that they talk about that there's going to be no more than 2 homes per acres. But that's a gross number, obviously. So this is kind of how Donegan liked to spin this. This is how developers spin it. It averages out to 2 homes per acre, which is true. The problem is you have you have to have open space. You have to have infrastructure. You have to have roads, parks, amenity centers, all of these things. And which basically compresses the area that you can put houses in, which is why you have such high density in Sonoma Verde. I'm going to let Chris continue talking about this history.
The density means that you can have smaller lots, but with those smaller lots, we have to create open space. We have to preserve trees along the creeks and the natural water courses. And so we have a mix of units. We have some 1 acre lots. We have some 60-foot lots, 80-foot lots, half-acre lots. And there was a blend of different things. And the development was basically set back off of 205. And with that, so we're looking at 1,100 total lots on the 550 acres. And that was zoned and approved. And that zoning is in place. And it was part of the development agreement and it's part of the plan development that was also approved by the council and then ratified basically in subsequent councils.
Which is an important distinction because remember in the last show I talked about how William Dahl he actually stated that when phase 3 comes into play, well, don't worry because we'll be able to change what's going on there and we won't be bound by any legal documents. Mr. Dahl is either lying to you or he is an imbecile or imbecile, either however you want to say it, because you are bound by the legal documents. And in fact, there's something in this agreement that I wanted to highlight. And this is in Exhibit F. And it's on page 1 of Exhibit F. And one of the things it says is that the development property shall comply with the concept plan and that the developer may amend the concept plan from time to time, provided that the revised concept plan complies with this agreement. So Mr. Dahl is talking a lot about, we need a senior center and we need this, we need that, and talking all about amenities when amenities have nothing to do with the PID whatsoever, and frankly the developer agreement. So when people talk about, we can change this in phase 3, they are lying to you. They're lying. The developer doesn't have to change one single thing. They just have to make sure that everything that they've done complies with the agreement. And one of the maximum density, this is going to be in Exhibit F, page 2. This is of the development agreement. It states that there may be up to 1,095 dwelling units on the development property. So that is key. Let's keep going, with Mr. Cooney.
We also agreed that we attempted to put the city in the water business to basically develop a water system so that you could be in control of your own destiny and create your own development rules, your own land use plans. Because when you have utilities that you can offer developers, you're really in the catbird seat as to what kind of development, what kind of communities you want.
Yeah, so what's important about the fact that he talked about being in the water business. Now, of course, the big criticism about me as mayor is that I gave away 4,000 acres of our future to the city of Rockwall. Well, why did we do that? Well, because those who were trying to, because those who were who owned those properties, they were going to put a mud district in. And the only reason they could put a mud district in is because the city of McLennan-Chisholm did not have a water department. We didn't provide water. And I took out, but if you continue listen to Mr. Cooney's comments, he talks about how they tried to negotiate that and the North Texas Water District and I think it was the city of Terrell absolutely put the kibosh on that, would not allow it. The city of McLennan-Chisholm cannot have a water department. The city of Rockwall has one, and the city of Rockwall can prevent a mud district from going in. You see, those 4,000 acres that are on our border, they were planning to put massive apartment complexes in. Why? Because they can create a water district. That's what they can do in that mud district. And so that's the key problem with that. So let's let Chris Cooney continue in this.
Unfortunately, we were looking to do a water line that was going to go all the way to Terrell. We hit a snag with the North Texas Municipal Water District in the city of Terrell, so we had to backtrack. So RCH actually provides the water, but we were able to work out an agreement with the city and RCH that the city actually owns the water lines that are in Sonoma Verde. Now that's important because at some point in time, whenever you decide it's time to, and it may be 10 years, it may be 20, it may be 50, I don't know. But at the point in which you decide that you want to get into the water business and you want to be a part of a regional system, you won't have to condemn those lines and you won't have to buy those lines. Those are city lines. You can use those lines as you pledge bonds for future road projects in other parts of the city. It's a benefit to the city.
So this is one of the things that as a developer he sees a benefit, because having the water lines and in the long term enables you as a city not to have to buy those back. The city owns the water supply. The city owns the water lines. They don't provide the water, however, and that's key. The good news is in all of this is that in the midst of all of our the fiasco of the power outage and everything, we finally have got Adrian Balcom back. I'm so glad you're back with me. How are you? Are you? Have you survived?
I think I survived. It's like, it's good.
All right. Well, very good. So, were you able to see what? Do you have any comments on what Chris Cooney has talked about so far? Because we're talking about water and water supplies at this point, and I'm about to talk about. So despite the fact that Chris Cooney talks about how the city of McClench Chisholm doesn't provide water, we tried to get in the water business, well, we can't do that. Despite that, we have a member of city council that asks a question that proves she's not listening to a thing anyone's saying. Do you want to? You want to see that?
Yeah, I want to see that.
All right, so watch this. Yeah, I mean, it seemed as though even the members of city council are looking at her going, yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with the PID or anything.
Right. The PID, of course, the water lines, the infrastructure related items, that's what should have been about the discussion. And so the RCH is a private contractor. They are the ones who supply the water. If you have issues with water pressure, okay, then you need to talk with them or talk with a plumber, because that just wasn't an appropriate question to that just wasn't appropriate.
Yeah, no question about that. You're not going to get any argument from me on that. So let's go back to Chris Cooney and let him continue talking about some of the history.
In the development agreement, I know that one of the commitments, or the commitments in terms of what we were going to do, and it wasn't really part of the PID, but it was part of the development agreement, was the amenity center that was to be built, the swimming pool that was to be built, Lee Road. There's some landscaping improvements that were to be done at the entrance and landscaping at both entrances, including actually even the monument feature, the clock tower that's there was part of the deal. And then there's planned to be trails, and there's planned to be other parks that are part of the project that are to be done as it phases out. And again, I'll let Mr. Albert talk about that.
Yeah, so I've got you on right now, but basically he's talking about what the developer is going to do But you know, he kind of makes it sound like those two things are just a little bit a part of the same thing, doesn't he? Does he kind of add some confusion there or not? Oh, I'm losing you. I'm not hearing you, Adrian.
Sorry.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, it did sound a little bit confusing, but again, he's involved in this. He's thinking that the council is up to speed. You know, that they've read their documents, right, that they're familiar with the developer agreement. They understand that the PID is related to infrastructure. The amenities are what the developer is paying to do. Like they're the ones who do the amenities. And so he was just kind of briefly going overview of the history and kind of talking about, you know, as the phase one was going, like, you know, what kind of expectations that you were going to see, you know, because I think that he was just kind of just talking about the what was going to be produced. And so I think that there was a little bit of misunderstanding of what was shared. And so it kind of construed into a misunderstanding.
And it kind of sounded like he was trying to talk, because there were a lot of people who came up and said, well, you know, this developer, Sonoma Verde, they're not doing anything. They haven't done anything for us. And he's saying, well, wait a minute, they've actually done a lot, and in fact, they've gone ahead of schedule on a lot of things.
Yes, I mean, there's a swimming pool, there's tennis courts, basketball court, volleyball, a sand volleyball court. There was a park. The pavilion and amenity center. That all of that is there. They're in the process of actually going into finishing up League Road in regard to the portion that's outside of what they had already agreed that they were going to do in the development agreement. See, they were going to just go to the paving was just going to be on the backside of League Road, but then they went all the way to Frontier Trail right before the elbow happens, and so that's all like concrete there.
Yeah, it's not just topping it off with blacktop. They actually put concrete in there, which is way more expensive and a lot more durable.
Yes, and so again, they've met all of their requirements that was stated in the development agreement, and also the SAP, which is the Service and Assessment Plan, and so in the expectation of phase one. And so people were coming up and talking about things that they haven't completed, and it was like, okay, they did, and we're talking about phase two right now.
Yes.
And just to kind of bring light to, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with the area, but just past the park, there's like an extra area of grass patch past the ball fields. I think you briefly talked about it in your last video, but past that, this is going to be where the next phase is, and there's nobody there. There's no homes that are live-in right now. I mean, it's just street, and they have a lamppost up and all that, but you know, they have to have like irrigation system to be put in to this low elevation area that's going to be where the park would be. So it's kind of like, it's really weird to hear people saying they're making demands about, oh, well, we don't have the ball fields yet. We want these ball fields. We want, it's like, okay, well, that can't happen until this thing happens first, you know?
Yeah. So. And you know, one of the things I found was interesting is that one person got up and talked about the pool and how substandard it is. And in fact, the pool that Sonoma Verde has for the size of the development is more of a resort size pool, one that was kind of an overkill, if you will. And so it reminds me of the Waterview pool without the slides, because as far as the size goes, it's a similar in size. So it is shocking to hear people grouse about that, but then again, who pays for it? Now let's continue with Chris, and I think I've got one or two more clips here to show, so let's listen to that.
And I think it's real important. Again, there's a lot of misunderstanding about the PID. The PID that has already been approved and levied against phase one, those assessments are done. That's it. The people that live in phase one, this PID issuance, this discussion of PID issuance, if you move forward, will not affect those people in any way. They're not on the hook for it, nor is the city. It's the assessments that's levied against the 213 people within that development only. So when you're talking about approving this PID, and that's the way the PIDs are done, they're done on a phase-by-phase basis, because costs increase as you go. So the PID issuance in the next phase may be a little bit more, and that's how it works. I'll let your financial advisors tell you. I think it's very, very important to say that the city of McLennan Chisholm is not pledging any revenue, any source of funds, anything in any way that provides any kind of financial obligation on the city to pay back the PID bonds in the event there was a default. It's all the risk on the developer and those assessments levied against the homeowners.
Yes, so there is, I think, one of the key things that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And, what's interesting is that Trudy Woessner kind of highlights that. She's a little confused, I think, when she came into the meeting, because many of those who supported her campaign and got her elected, these are the same people who are passing out misinformation. And I think listening to what she has to say is enlightening, especially when you hear one of her chief supporters and one of the individuals who does more to lie and provide misinformation in our city, someone who has done more of it than anyone else, in my experience at least, that I have seen. But let's first listen to what Trudy says, because she's right.
I would like to know what the worst case scenario would be.
The worst case scenario for the developer, well, you don't have risk. All you have is responsibility. You have a responsibility, and your financial advisor is going to comment on this in a moment. But you're required to make sure that the facts were properly disclosed in the offering document that was already put out to investors and that the underwriter put out. You're approving that, and you're approving that based on your legal counsel, your bond counsel, your financial advisor, the underwriter. They're making representations. They ask us pages and pages of questions and due diligence. We had to answer those. We had to prove up that we had done A, B, C, D, E, that we're in compliance with the development agreement. We have funds necessary to complete not only the public improvements that are financed by the bonds, but the private improvements that are not related to that. And private improvements are things such as lot benching and things that aren't public. So this developer had to prove all those things up, and that offering document that you've already approved, those were all investigated by your underwriter and your bond counsel and your financial advisor, and that was a responsibility you had to make sure those things were accurate and right to the best of your knowledge. And then you have a responsibility going forward to make sure that you attempt to collect those assessments, and if we don't pay, you're required to pursue the same remedy on us that you pursue if we didn't pay your city tax. And we'll be down at the courthouse steps with our property up because we owe county tax, school district tax, city tax, and the PID assessment. We're not going to end up at the courthouse steps saying, hey, we paid our school tax, but we decided not to pay the PID. No, it's a deal where you probably didn't pay any of it, and that's why you're on the courthouse steps. There's not a deal where you take your tax statement and say, I think I'll pay the county this time, but I won't pay the city. That you just pay your tax statement. And that would be the remedy. In the worst case scenario, the ramifications are really on us, be losing our property. For the city, you make your proper disclosures, you follow the rules set forth in the documents that the bond counsel is going to describe for you in a moment, and you collect the assessment and you enforce collection just like you would your property tax.
So that wasn't the video clip that I thought it was. It was, but this highlights the fact that that there is no danger to the city. But here, and I think this is key. Watch what this gentleman, guy's name is Lance Agee, who started these social media groups on Facebook and has time and again put forth information like what he is about to say, and I've got a couple of his clips where he says things that are absolutely untrue. But listen to, and in his writing, when he writes on Facebook, these are the same. He says it with as much intensity and as much surety as he does here. And this is what makes people like him such a problem for people who care about what is true.
The gentleman mentioned something about default of the PID. or Sonoma Verde in general. It says the cost goes to the developer and to the homeowners. So I guess I have a question to whoever you were that spoke. Maybe it was you, Mr. Cuney. But if Sonoma Verde goes defunct, bankrupt, because these developers can't sell any properties and it's continuing at the rate that it has, who picks up that cost? The city's placing a bond on it, right? But yeah, so the city's posting the bond, right? But if it goes bankrupt, does all those fees and everything at $10 million go back to, or does the cost of everything come back onto the homeowners and then we have to pay an additional share?
Yeah, so if you watched, you saw Chris Cooney shake his head when he said the city issues the bonds, right? And Chris is like, no. Why does William Dahl think the city issues bonds? Because this guy is one of his chief supporters. This guy has. This is what's funny is the way he doesn't listen to anything anyone has to say. Because he's right no matter what. You've run into this guy once or twice because he lives in your neighborhood, haven't you?
These documents, it's specifically clear that the expert person that you're supposed to be, and it is referred to as an expert, was the PID administrator. They're supposed to be the ones who are very familiar about all this information, and also to give counsel on this. And again, I mean, the city accrues these documents so that it goes to FMS Bonds, who actually does all the actual legwork of the financing of the bonds and things of that nature. So the whole risk really is on the developer and, of course, the homeowner if they don't do their part in, paying their assessments and stuff like that. So I'm glad that he did share. He was kind enough. The developers council shared with the city council about how he perceives this information. And again, the council's not asking our finance people, our bond counsel, our individuals that actually work on behalf of the city. So that's a little bit concerning. So, but I'm thankful that he was able to share for there to be an understanding that it is really the risk on this end, not the city's end.
That's right. And so this is the video this is the message that Wosner talks about poor communications and misinformation. So watch this.
I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Any questions?
I have a ton.
You have a ton.
I have a ton of questions.
Go ahead.
All right. Some of these may not pertain to you, or maybe I just don't understand some of this, so I'm trying to learn. The PID. The PID for what is being paid is strictly for roads,
It's
sewer,
water,
and what else?
and storm range.
Okay. So that has nothing to do with the amenities, correct?
No, the amenities are paid for by the developer.
Okay. Do they pay an HOA fee also?
Do who?
Do the residents? I'm talking for the residents.
The residents pay an HOA fee.
Okay, so they have an HOA fee and a PID fee.
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, ultimately, Trudy's trying to understand what's going on in this PID, and this is she just identified that the PID and amenities are two different things, and despite the fact that Mr. Agee has been telling his neighbors and is sure that if these if the developer goes defunct, that the homeowners are left holding the bag. Not only does the city not issue bonds, but if the developer were to go to defunct, there's a lot of private investors who would be holding the bag, not the people who live in Sonoma Verde. But here's the thing that got you, and we had talked about this, and it was something that that Councilmember Dahl put on his own little Facebook show, where he talks about what's important to him as a city council. So let's watch this.
Do I want to see more amenities in Sonoma Verde? Yes, I would like to see more amenities in Sonoma Verde, and I'd like to see more amenities for a couple of reasons. A lot of the residents are asking for those amenities, but B, a development that has a development that has a healthy amount of amenities, is going to be a lot easier to sell. So if you have a healthy amount of amenities and people come in and they look around and they get the wild eyes and they look at everything that they're getting, they're going to be more likely to be able to willing to buy into that development. And the sooner that we can get 75% of those lots over to ownership, the sooner that we can get the HOA to ownership. So having amenities, I think, is a win-win. The developer's gonna have to point.
Yeah, so Mr. Dahl is very concerned about your amenities in McLennan Chisholm. He doesn't, in Sonoma Verde. He doesn't live in Sonoma Verde. He lives in Quail Creek, just a few houses down from me. But he's concerned about your amenities. How does that make you feel?
He absolutely is proving to me that he really doesn't know his position as a city council member. Any of those HOA discussions on that should be within the HOA. The city council has no, that's not their place to even have that discussion. And in fact, as we have time and again expressed, that the developer has to pay for those amenities. The city council can't sit there and tell a business, okay, you need to pay for this.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. That you need to pay for this, and and telling a business that this is what you need to do, that's ridiculous. And then, not to mention, the homeowners that live here, we have to pay an HOA fee, because the HOA fee takes care of maintenance of our common areas, and that may utilize electricity, it may utilize water. Or we have to take care of, we have a porter service or clean up the pool and things of that nature. All of that takes money out of the budget to pay for the maintenance of that. So for him to sit there and say, oh, we need more amenities, or he wants to see more amenities, excuse you, that's not your place.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. You're absolutely right. And unfortunately, I'm getting the hook. I've got to take my daughter to a soccer practice, and as you know and I know, our kids come first, right? So, all right. So this is not over. This show is not over. We're gonna continue. So we're gonna have 3 parts to this show, and we're going to finish this because there's a lot more that we want to talk about. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, Adrian, thank you for being with me today, and I thank all of you for being with me today, because this has been a crazy day to do a show, and a lot has gone wrong. But everything that we're trying to do is help you to become better informed, more informed, so that you are not stuck with misinformation and outright lies that really put our city in Dutch. So thank you for being with me today and for joining me with the Iron Lady. And I will let you know, we will finish this show. We have a city council meeting tomorrow, but I'm going to try to see if we can't do something tomorrow before that council meeting goes. So you have a great day, and we will see you next time.